just to start it off, I'm going to share a few stories with you today, and I'm going to tie it all back into leadership and what it takes to be an effective leader. So I'm Brittany. I'm a courageous communicator, a present witness, and a centered discerner. I am a natural curly expert with 18 years of experience. I empower stylists to have a balanced and successful career, and with my legacy of leadership, mentorship, and education, I not only elevate my team, but also the industry as a whole. I am dedicated to cultivating and inviting an inclusive community where our salon continues to be a hub for connection, education, and self-love. So, this year, coming out of last year, I just felt a lot of pain from things that happened in my salon, and I came into the year just wanting to focus on leadership. That was my focus. I didn't want to blame anybody for what was happening in my salon. I wanted to take ownership and focus on leadership for the beginning of the year. And when I claimed that at the beginning of the year, so many things fell into place as far as leadership goes. I was invited to a class at IU over leadership, a strategic leadership class, just a lot of different things that happened. I was nominated for an award from Seat at the Table, an organization here in Indianapolis, for a leadership award. And then I'm here today before you speaking about leadership. So I think it's not ironic to claim something and then everything kind of falls into place. So when I met with Ryan, to pick which month I will be speaking, I Blossom is what spoke to me, and Blooming is what spoke to me. So the title of my talk is Blooming, a story about motherhood, business, and leadership. And I don't want to bore you, but I do want to read a passage from a banned book, because I'm a bit rebellious. And the banned book is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Don't want to bore you, but it kind of ties into everything. So Dr. Maya Angelou starts by saying, for nearly a year, before I read this, let me give a little background, okay? If we don't know about Dr. Maya Angelou's story before she became Dr. Maya Angelou, she was actually sexually assaulted as a child, which made her be silent for many, many years. So this is the beginning of when she started to talk again. For nearly a year, I sopped around the house, the store, the school, and the church like an old biscuit, dirty and inedible. Then I met, or rather got to know, a lady who threw me my first lifeline. Mrs. Bertha Flowers was the aristocrat of black stamps. She had the grace and control to appear warm in the coldest weather, and on the Arkansas summer days, it seemed like she had a private breeze that swirled around, cooling her. She was thin without the taut look of wiry people, and her printed viola dresses were flowered, and her hats were flowered, and they were right for her, as denim overalls were for a farmer. She was our side's answer to the richest white woman in town. One summer afternoon, fresh milk fresh in my memory, she stopped by the store to buy provisions. Another Negro woman of her health and age would be expected to carry the paper sacks home in one hand, but Mama said, Sister Flowers, I'll send Bailey up to your house with these things. She smiled a slow, dragging smile and said, thank you, Mrs. Henderson, but I prefer Marguerite. Marguerite is Dr. Maya Angelou. My name was beautiful when she said it. I've been meaning to talk to her anyway. They gave each other looks. Come walk with me, Marguerite. I couldn't have refused even if I wanted to. She pronounced my name so nicely, or more correctly, she spoke each word with such clarity that a certain foreigner who didn't understand English could have understood her. She goes on to say, so this is, and I'm kind of skipping over the passage because I didn't want to read the whole thing, but Mrs. Flower goes on to say, no one is going to make you talk. Possibly no one can. But bear in mind, language is man's way of communicating with his fellow man, and language alone is what separates him from the lower animals. This was a totally new idea to me, and I would need time to think about it. The odors in the house surprised me. Somehow I never connected Mrs. Flowers with food or eating or any kind of common experience of common people. There must have been an outhouse too, but my mind never recorded. And it followed that Mrs. Flowers would have ice on an ordinary day when most families in our town brought out ice on late Saturdays. Only a few times in the summer we would use the ice freezers. That's my niece, y'all. Isn't she so beautiful? I saw y'all all crooning over her when she came in. She's beautiful. As I ate, she began the first of what we later called my lessons in living. She said that I must be intolerant of ignorance, but also understanding of illiteracy. That some people unable to go to school were more educated and even more intelligent than college professor. She encouraged me to listen carefully to what country people called mother's wit. In those homely sayings was couched in the collective wisdom of generations. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Her voice slid in and curved down through over the words. She was nearly singing. I wanted to look at the pages. Were they the same as I had read, or were there notes, music lined on the pages as in a hymn book? Her sounds began cascading gently, and I knew from listening to thousands of preachers that she was nearing the end of her reading. I hadn't really heard to understand a single word. How did you like that? This is important because this is the first time that Maya speaks. So Mrs. Flower says, how did you like that? It occurred to me that she expected a response. The sweet vanilla flavor was still on my tongue, and her reading was a wonder in my ears. I had to speak. I said, yes, ma'am. It was the least I could do, but it was the most also. A child's childhood logic never asked to be proved. I didn't question why Mrs. Flowers had singled me out for attention, nor did it occur to me that Mama might have asked her to give me a little talking to. All I cared about was that she had made tea cookies for me. She read to me from her favorite book, and it was enough to prove that she liked me. So my question for you guys to think about this talk is, who has been a Mrs. Flowers in your life? I have many people who've been a Mrs. Flowers in my own life, and I strive to be Mrs. Flowers in the same way that she was to Maya. And when we think about Dr. Maya Angelou and the person who she became, and we saw her speaking for President Obama's inauguration and just different things that she's done over her life, sometimes we don't take the time to study leaders in their beginning stages. We see the person who they become, and we assume they just became that. And so when I go through this today, I'm sharing some really personal stories, and I think that it kind of will show how I've molded to be who I am today. So and again, I said in the beginning, I'm going to tie everything into leadership, but I want to go over 4 different things that leaders go through. And the first one is leadership versus victim mentality. So in my first year of business, I think that was 2016, I discovered I was pregnant. I'm pregnant. In the midst of that pregnancy, my child's father ended up pivoting and got a new girlfriend. He ended up marrying her, became his wife. They've been married for 7 years. And I just, at the time, just felt, it was one of my first times that I felt rejected. And I've been rejected before, but that was really heavy on me, especially while I was pregnant. And so I just couldn't understand why this was happening to me. I was just fired from my job a year prior, which is how I even started the business. And I just had trouble maneuvering through, but something that really helped me, number one, was prayer, my family, but also going to therapy. Therapy really got my mind right so that I was able to have an effective co-parenting relationship with my child's father and his wife from the beginning. And we have shared our child seamlessly. And I can't say that's always the case when co-parenting. Co-parenting can be so difficult. But I knew that I had to put my feelings aside and well, not really put my feelings aside, actually address my feelings in therapy so that I was able to be a great mother to my daughter. And, um, you know, during that time, and remember, I had just started the business. So I'm thinking, should I go back to work? Should I go back to work? Should I go get a job? But I stayed the course, and I had to fight victim mentality. So the way that I felt like I fought victim mentality was I reframed my challenges. I controlled what I can control, and I thought to myself, what's the one step I can take forward? And this helped me shift to focus from what's blocking to what was possible. So the second thing, I think leaders deal with all type of things, but the second point I want to make today is leadership versus assertiveness. So finding the balance of assertiveness is a constant challenge for me in my business. Speaking to everyone with respect and love is so important to me. And I want to share a story that happened probably within 3 years of me owning a business. So at the time, we were fully staffed, and fully staffed for us was 4 stylists, including myself. And a client called me and told me that my staff was speaking about me while I wasn't there. They were speaking, according to her, negative things. And I was furious. I was so upset. I felt betrayed. I'm like, why are they speaking about me in a place that I created? I didn't sleep that night. I was actually scheduled to work the next day. And I think I texted everybody and was like, everybody meet me in the morning. We're going to have a meeting. And I came in, I let them know what happened. I was clearly upset. I wasn't screaming, but I was angry. And hindsight, I don't like how that made me feel, my staff feel. They were hurt. They felt like, we've been working with you for this long, and you come to us kind of accusatory rather than trying to figure out what actually happened. And so it was at that point where I made a decision that that wasn't the correct way to be assertive. In fact, I should have canceled my day, and I should have sat at home and centered myself, and then approached it maybe the next week in a different way. But that really helped me at the time, because it's from then when I decided that I wasn't going to talk to my staff that way. And I think that they deserved love and respect, just like I crave love and respect from them. So but we still need assertiveness, right? But it's about the tone. Leaders without assertiveness are scared to have tough and needed conversations. They seem passive and insincere. And so, like I said in the beginning, I don't really fray from tough conversations, but I needed to work on my delivery as far as being a leader. So another challenge leaders have is self-awareness. With self-awareness, we have the ability to be humble, emotional, and intelligent, and we also have the ability to grow. So prior to me opening my own salon, I was 8 years in the business, and I had worked at, I think, 6 salons at the time. My motivation for opening my own space, which was a suite at first, was because my experiences at the other salons were not great. I felt like I was talked to all type of ways, but I'm going to go into a story about what happened when I was 18. So when I was 18, I was in cosmetology school, and I would go to a salon to work as the receptionist after I got out of school. So there was a water leak one time, and I didn't know where the shutoff was for the water. I'm a girl. Not to say girls don't know where it is, but I had no idea. I'm 18. I didn't have a clue of what a shutoff valve was. Water's everywhere. The owner is screaming at me over the phone. He's like, "Are you stupid or something?" I'm like, "No." And to this day, all my staff knows where the water valve shutoff is. But I knew then at that time at 18 that this was not going to be a copacetic place for me to work, because I had self-awareness and I knew that I wasn't, because, I could have graduated hair school and continued to work at that salon, but just seeing the interaction from me being a receptionist and me being 18 and him yelling at me like that over the phone and speaking to me in a derogatory way, I just knew that that wasn't going to work for me. But even as I told that story before about my reaction, I didn't want to turn into that person. And so that self-awareness helped me. So leaders with self-awareness understand their strengths, their weaknesses, their triggers. And without it, we operate from ego, defensiveness, and blind spots. So lastly, leaders suffer from burnout. So I told you in the beginning, Anitra asked me, and I was like, can't do it, Anitra. I'm experiencing burnout. I'm going to talk about my dad a little bit. He didn't know I was going to talk about him. My father worked at a place that burnout was his normal. And I'm in my 30s, and I feel like our parents, they just went to work and they stayed there and they retired. Everything goes, anything goes, and they just stayed there to be able to provide for their families. And so as I continued to get older and saw my father operating in this space, I just knew that I didn't want that for myself, but yet if he hadn't done that, he would not be able to provide for our family, but also I wouldn't be able to see what that looked like. But now he has retired and he's an entrepreneur and he looks at life a little bit different now. And all those things that he tolerated when he was younger made him to who he is today. And so leaders experience burnout. And when we are burnt out, we lead from exhaustion and not vision. We struggle with patience, creative, and decision making. So the way that I fight burnout is I invest in rest and reflection. One thing about me, I'm going to rest. I'm going to go to bed early. I'm going to tell you no. I'm going to cancel plans. I have always really valued rest, and I think that has helped me overcome a lot of burnout situations. So we delegate. Leaders who don't want to suffer from burnout have to delegate. How many leaders struggle with delegating? It is so hard sometimes, but we can't carry everything alone. We need to create a culture where also our team can thrive without burning out, and that's something that I strive to do as well. So in conclusion, leaders have to keep themselves out of victim mentality. We can control what we control. Leaders are assertive, but also have appropriate tone, right? Leaders are self-aware. We invest in ourselves so that we don't become stagnant. You can't guide others where you haven't gone yourself. And leaders, when they're burnt out or overextended, have to set boundaries, and they have to stick to those boundaries. But also, motherhood and business both require seasons of rest and renewal. So through this process of owning a business and my daughter, who's now 8, rest is so important. And also, leadership is reciprocal. When you lead people, they become leaders, similar to Mrs. Flowers and Dr. Maya Angelou. So in conclusion, I just want to give a quote from Madam C.J. Walker, who I think is appropriate. She's here from Indianapolis and one of the first black millionaires here in our country, but also she was in the hair business too. And she said, "My object in life is not to simply make money for myself and spend it on myself in dressing or running around in an automobile, but I love to use a part of what I make in trying to help others." Thank you.